right, everybody. Hello, and welcome to tonight's United Goalkeeping Alliance Parents Seminar. Tonight, we're fortunate enough to have Coach Steve Meyer out of California and of Katie's Say with us. Coach Steve, how are you?
I'm good, Eric. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to have a chat with you, and let's get started.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. For everybody, real quickly, a pretty detailed agenda. We're going to speak to everything we believe will benefit you with dealing with your kid goalkeeper during their season. A lot goes on in their minds, and we're going to help you with keeping them honest through their expectations, mentally as well. Many of you will have teams with multiple goalkeepers on the team. Having the support system and the surrounding family, friends, etc. The car ride home is something I always like to speak to. And then we're going to learn more about Katie's Save. But first, if we could, Coach Steve, if you could introduce yourself, I'd appreciate that.
Hey, everybody. I am Steve Meyer. I am the father of Katie. She was a goalkeeper at Stanford University. She passed away about 2.5 years ago. And I had a beautiful relationship with her. We trained together all the time. It was wonderful father-daughter time together. I'm coming to you now from a park called Borchard Park that we spent hundreds of hours at together. And I am just here to offer my experience, things I've learned. As I always say, if something makes sense to you, run with it. If it doesn't, I am unoffended. Like, let it go. Uh, we went through everything with Katie from AYSO to local club to ECNL to years of youth national teams to Stanford, and here we are. And we have a foundation named in her honor, and we can talk about that later, what the goals are there. But as far as today goes, I'm an open book when it comes to the keeper journey, the family of a goalkeeper, feelings you may feel as a parent. Anything is on the table. And so let's get started when you're ready, Eric.
Coach, I appreciate that greatly. Um, Erik Eisenhut, United Goalkeeping Alliance board member, and Steve, on behalf of all the board and everybody that's here tonight, thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate these moments, and a lot of time goes into these presentations. And I've been working with you for a while now, and I appreciate all the time you always give us here at the United Goalkeeping Alliance. So, and I'll say that again at the end. Thank you, thank you.
Of course. It's an honor to
All
be
right,
here. Thank you.
let's get into the very beginning, Steve. The season's not even upon us. We're probably still in preseason mode. You're sitting down with your goalkeeper and you're discussing goals and expectations. Why and what's the meat and potatoes of that conversation with your goalkeeper?
I think you have to talk about it because, like, for example, when I first meet a goalkeeper out here or wherever it might be, the first thing I ask is, do you like playing this position? Do you love it? And if the answer is not a resounding yes, then that automatically changes the expectations because if they don't love it, it's really hard. Like, through their teen years, they're going to be diving thousands of times on the earth. Not everybody really wants to do that, right? And they have soccer balls flying at them at crazy rates of speed. And it just takes, it's a counterintuitive position in a way where you want to go to the ball, you want to go into traffic, and not everybody wants to do that. And that's okay. Now, if their goals are, I want to be, you know, amazing this season, then great. I always try to underlie it with, it's okay if you don't want this, but you have to be honest about it with your parents, or parents can have that conversation with their kid. Um, I think it's a really tough thing for a young person who is unable, for whatever reason, to express, hey, I don't really love doing this. This is a lot of pressure. This is not my gig. And if that is true, but it doesn't get out, and they have coaches or parents or teammates expecting a certain level out of them, and they're not really ready to truly give it, that can create a conflict that's pretty tough.
we spoke, Steve, about if-then statements.
Yes. So that speaks to, in my opinion anyway, the keeper that does want to ascend, right? They want to find their way onto an ECNL team perhaps, or the better team in their area, or just stay on their team but become unbelievably good. So the if then piece is really, if you want X, then you probably need to do Y. Meaning if you have a goalkeeper whose hands aren't so good, then they really need to be working on their hands and on their own time. Sometimes I talk about, and other coaches do too, it's not just my own thought. If you just go to your club training, that's the minimum. And then that's what you're going to get is the minimum. So if a player wants to be really great, they got to find ways to spend time on their own or with their parents or their sisters or brothers. It could be beautiful time spent together, by the way. Let's say you have one sibling who's a baseball player and you give your daughter as a goalkeeper and the son's a baseball player. He could be whipping that soccer ball, and working on the hands. There's ways creatively to get through this stuff, to spend time doing it. If you have a goalkeeper who's not particularly great at jumping, if you want to be great, then get on a jump rope, get on your plyometrics and spend time doing it. Crank up the music and make it fun. Make it fun. I think that helps keep the journey, which is tough enough as it is, kind of enjoyable. So those if then things are stuff to talk about, I think, with your keeper, your player, your trainer, your daughter, and just be honest about them, and you'll find your way through. Like, it does help keep the keeper honest about what they really want, because if you have the if then discussion and a month goes by and the then part hasn't really been addressed, well, maybe that's another time for another chat.
Which brings us to our final bullet of resetting goals and expectations. and
Right.
and this is meant to be positive, right? Like, hey, I'm smashing these goals, let's reset them. But it can also go the other way too.
It can, and it's okay if it goes the other way. By the way, you may have an ECNL keeper who's mentally or psychologically just done with it, and she's 15 and she's had enough, and she's not really pursuing that if-then track on ascending. Then that's okay, right? But then a positive or an ascending goal situation is someone who's perhaps a late blooming athlete or someone who's just putting in the grind and you're starting to see it on the field. Maybe it moves from, we're doing what we're doing right now, but we heard about this amazing keeper trainer or this great keeper camp somewhere. Maybe we're going to go try that out, and just supporting your child as they move along through this journey. And I think parents do a really good job of that. At least in my experience out here, the support of the young people I work with by their parents is phenomenal. And you may have a situation where you have a goalkeeper who is ascending and those goals do get reset. Maybe national team stuff was an absolute pipe dream or a fairy tale, but by the time they're turning 16, hey, they're looking amazing and they need to train even more and they love it. And you just keep supporting your child as they go through.
Great. I love it. Love where you're going with this, because this is the higher the expectations, the higher the goals. Kids sometimes can put pressure on themselves, and mentally, this is becoming the item to me in youth sports, and just identifying ways to support mental performance. About these three bullets that we have here. You and I went back and forth. Our conversation was a lot longer than these three bullets, but these are the three bullets that kind of summed it up. So I'll let you pick one of them and go. I love the middle one. Dream as if your GK has no boundaries. I think that.
Let's start with that. Yeah, let's start with that. We'll talk about that. I always encouraged Katie to do that. I think one of the reasons I can still, just being really honest with everybody, be involved in what I do now is because for soccer, it was her happy place. And we encouraged her and she took it on to dream as if though there would not be a no at the end of that dream. And that's okay. And that that should be the case. I think, you want to encourage your child, your goalkeeper, your player to dream big and chase big. Like, go get after it. You never know what could happen, um, and that's great. Why would we want to spend a minute telling our daughter or our son, there's no freaking way you're going to be able to do that? That's horrible. Like, I don't. I'm just not on board with that. And listen to them. If they are dreaming big, hear it out. Figure out a way. Maybe you can support it. Um, if they're not dreaming big, that's okay too. Maybe you have a player who just wants to play recreationally and go through high school and go on into something else. That's great. I think as parents, it's okay to also, at the third bullet point there, being honest with yourself. Um, I think it can get tough sometimes when we have dreams for our kids that are bigger than maybe what the reality is on the highway for them. So that gets tricky because you want them to keep dreaming big, and yet you may identify that they're not really training enough, or they're not nasty enough in goal to play at the highest level. And so that'll eventually lead to a conversation. I want to support you with whatever you want. Um, and you just take it from there. I think communication is huge. It's huge. I'm not saying I do it right, because who knows in the end. But when I work with kids, I very much involve their parents in conversations. Sometimes that can happen for a chunk of the session, and that's okay. And at first, the child might be like, "Oh, I don't know if I," but it ends up being really good because now everybody's on board with the same page. There's clarity there, and clarity with whatever it is. It might be an enjoyable clarity. It might be a less than enjoyable clarity. Maybe it's something a coach said and we work through that, or who knows, something a teammate said, whatever the situation may be. Communication is huge. That's why the first bullet point, listen to your goalkeeper. It's important. They may be hearing things out there or feeling things that you're not observing that they are. Sometimes clubs practice, a quarter of a mile away from where parents are. Maybe parents just drop their kid off, and that's great too. And they don't really see what happens at practice. And so you just want to hear them out.
Yeah, and to that point, I am a very big believer in having open communication and almost too much communication. I'd rather talk too much and make sure we're on the same page than undercut it, so to speak. From where I train, the parents can hear everything. Anything I say, they hear it. And I want that. And the reason being is because I want them to understand the why and the what and the grunt, the grit you mentioned that goes into it. Because I think they're going to have a better appreciation for the car ride home, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But it makes that car ride home easier because they have an understanding as to what they can actually talk to them about, as opposed to whatever's in their head that might be right or wrong. This is one that I feel is intriguing because to me, you should always be on a team with 2 or 3 goalkeepers. And I just believe in that. I believe in the open competition. I believe in giving people the opportunity and not just having one goalkeeper. A lot of people agree with that. A lot of people disagree with that. And I'm okay with that. But I believe it builds competition and friendly competition. And believe it or not, some of those competitors are some of your best friends because of that competition on a daily basis, the grind you go through with them. But there's a lot of interesting bullets here on this. Where do you want to start? This is, to me, an important one because every goalkeeper, I think, will experience being the 1, being the 2, and being the 3. And
Yeah.
based on where they are in their own brain, it could be totally different and not aligned with what the coaching staff thinks.
Correct.
What do you think here, Steve?
Let's start with communications with the coaching staff. So right now across the country, I think, certainly here in SoCal, new club season is arriving upon us, and there may be some teams with different dynamics, right? Perhaps a team had a single goalkeeper last year, and the coach feels like we really need another one. And maybe you're the parent of that singular goalkeeper, and you liked watching your daughter or son play the entire game. That was great. Why wouldn't it be, by the way? And now you're sprung with the news that, by the way, I'm bringing in another goalkeeper. Sometimes coaches speak to that inartfully, I will say. and hopefully that's not the case. But, it's a struggle sometimes to go, I'm going to be okay with this. My daughter, my son, they're going to have to compete for time. Uh, you can ask your coach, why are you bringing on another keeper? You're highly likely going to get the answer that Erik just gave you, which is it brings competition. It's going to make your kid better. They'll probably end up with a really good training partner and friend out of it. And on you go. Now, sometimes getting into the other bullet point there being the 2 or the 3, that's a pretty big challenge for someone who's wildly competitive. I saw with my daughter Katie a couple of times along the way, there was a 2 and a 3 in club, and it worked great in both scenarios. One was the 2 was content being the 2. The 2 was honest with herself. Her parents were honest with themselves. There was a pretty big disparity, and that was fine. It was okay. The 2 didn't want anything to do with a game when they were playing one of the best teams in SoCal. Beautiful. It's a little trickier when both keepers are pretty dang good. And, with aspirations of playing in college, which many, many players have, as tough as that can be along the way in club soccer, I think it actually prepares them even better for the college level game, because in college, they're going to have minimum of 3, most likely. It's pretty rare to have just 2. And oftentimes they have 4. I work with a girl who's a freshman at a university out here in California. They have 5. And we want to try to get to the mentality for our children and more for them, really, where they say, you can bring 10 keepers out to this team if you want to. I'm going to be the one. And then, accepting a coach's decision as far as who's the 1, who's the 2, who's the 3. You may not agree with the coach. I might not agree with that coach, but I got to go. Here's where I would advise, and take it or leave it, in possibly agreeing with the coach. The coach, if they really want what's best for the team, isn't going to trot out somebody and call them the number 1 if they don't believe they're the number 1. Why would they not do that? So it's hard sometimes hearing it. But that's okay. And I also wanted to say, because I talk to the players I work with a lot, just because a coach has sort of taken the paintbrush and painted a scenario right now about you're the 2, right? You're the 2. There's the paint doesn't have to dry. It's just this moment in time. You're not permanently the 2. You just keep working and grinding. And if this is what you want, then you may find it. You may achieve it ultimately. And that's where the beauty of that competition comes from. I'm going to work with the team a little bit later tonight. They are seniors in high school. It's ECNL. Many of them are going to play D1. We have 3 goalkeepers on a club team, and all 3 of them could have went somewhere else. They all decided they wanted to stay in this environment to prepare for college, and it can get a little tricky. They're all very similar in level, and they've agreed to a playing time scenario where nobody's not going to play, right? It's club soccer, but they want, and we've agreed to sort of a hybrid version of what they're going to see in college. Like in college, the 1 is usually just playing all the time. And so if any of the 3 ascend to what would be considered the 1, yeah, they're going to play a little bit. And they're very supportive of each other, very competitive in practice, and it's a great time.
That's unusual, right, Steve?
It's highly
that is a
highly
perfect
unusual setting in club soccer.
Yes, that is the perfect setting. Go ahead.
The team I'm working with, we're trying to do unusual things, and it's not easy. Like, we have 25 field players, I believe it is, not 23, and not all of them are going to play every weekend, but they're okay with that. There's some grace in that, by the way, as well, at their age, because excuse me, some of them have campus visits, recruiting visits. Some of them have prom. Some of them have homecoming. So I will admit it's a little bit unique at their age, because they have other things that can happen throughout the year. And there's a little bit of grace for the goalkeeper. If there was just one goalkeeper, she would feel like, oh my God, I can't let my team down. I can't go to prom this weekend because we have an away game. I don't want to let my team down. Now there's some levity there, a little bit in the sense of I'm good. My teammates got this. I'm going to be able to go to prom, or I'm going to be able to go see my grandmother who's sick out of state. Like there's some grace in the numbers that we have on this particular team. I'm not saying we're doing it right. I do admit we're trying to do something unusual. It is a little more modeled after the university game, which is what they're all trying to achieve anyway. And I'm not saying it's right for a team of 12-year-olds to have 20 players, 23 players, but if that's your scenario and you love your daughter or sons, they love their training environment and they're into their coach, and you feel like they're developing both as a player and as a person, I would ask, why not keep them in that environment? Yeah.
And it comes down to the right back to where you started, the coaching staff and the communication that revolves around it.
Right.
100%. These are two things that I feel are absolutely necessary in any situation that you're looking to get yourself into from a club environment. And it takes a village, and the village can come from anywhere in any type of support system fashion. That doesn't necessarily have to be driving the kids. There are ways to do that. That said, where do you want to start with this one? And we can even start with that bottom one, the car ride home too. And I'm excited. I know they all kind of tie together, or can tie together.
Yeah, they can. They can tie together. Excuse me. I would say the car ride home, excuse me, ties back to what you had said earlier. When you're doing your trainings, you have, if they want to be, the parents close enough that they can hear what you're saying and what you're teaching and the thoughts you have for them, and then you can have a more informed parent. I think that's better. I do. Parents who understand some of the stuff that their excuse me, their keeper has to go through. Some of it's tough. It's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive to like have a great hand shape and just stay locked in right there when a ball is screaming at your face. The joke I always like to use is like, if someone took a toaster and just whipped it at you in the kitchen, you'd go like this, right? You wouldn't necessarily keep a beautiful hand shape and just say, bring it, I got this. I just stuck that, so it's tricky being a goalkeeper. There's so many things that are counter to human nature, not going backwards. Yet if you were standing at the edge of a cliff and someone threw something and you tried to save it from going over the cliff, we want to go like this and reach back and I'll save you. It's what we see in the movies, right? I got it. But you don't want to go backwards. You want to come forwards. And so the more little details that parents at least have a good understanding of, I think it fosters a better communication, because then they may not be wondering why so much a certain ball got past their child in a key moment in the game. I think that it's okay to let your kid vent after a game. I could be wrong about that. That's just my personal opinion. If they had a tough moment out there, let them let it out and just hear it out and talk about it and figure out a way to maybe that it won't happen again for them. But that's also easier said than done. You just never know. The car ride home, in my opinion, should never be one of having a tone of like punishment or you were terrible in that game or anything that's like that, because then we're just creating a negative association with the game of soccer. And we ultimately, hopefully, want our children to love the sport that they're involved in. After all, it's a huge commitment, this soccer, this sport, this journey, this club life. You want them to have positive associations with it. And sometimes that might be challenging, it might be as a parent, but for my 2 cents is you just want to keep it, you want to support them as much as you can. It's not easy being out there in front of goal, and just understand that. And that kind of, to me, circles into the taking a village and support system. Again, with everything I say, take it or leave it. It's fine. I'm unoffended. Parents, I always, with Katie, who was a goalkeeper, I have another daughter who's a field player. Little ways to maybe get along with parents of other players on your team and have them stay positive about your goalkeeper is during the games, compliment the other players when they do something great. You'll find that at least I found through the years, then those compliments and the positivity gets reciprocated back to your child. If you have a keeper parent who's like, oh my God, that kid's touch is terrible, what a horrible pass, and then you get overheard, it'll be very easy for the parent of a field player to, when a ball goes through your child's legs in goal, to want to pop off. And you don't want that. So that's just some advice, take it or leave it. Like, be very complimentary of your daughter or son's teammates during the game, and just try to keep it positive. It's not easy every time, but that's an aim for us to have. In terms of a goalkeeper coach on there, that's huge in my mind. That was a big deal for my daughter. I remember it wasn't her first goalkeeper coach, but it was one once she made the jump from a local-ish club team to ECNL. We were advised to go see this keeper coach who's no longer doing it. And I pull up with her, and she's 12, and we do the walk from the car across the park. And the first thing he said to me was, okay, I'm the soccer professional. You can go wait in the car. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know you. Like, what is this? And I didn't go wait in the car. And there was a vibe with him that was really negative in the session. Why can't you do this? It was ungood. That's my new phrase lately, ungood. Sorry about that, but I enjoy it. So
That's definitely, it's new to me, but I'll use it. It is ungood.
yeah, it is ungood. So do please, parents of keepers, do not waste a second with a trainer that you feel like is not ideal for your kid. Now, it may be a little bit of a journey to find that trainer, depending on where you live. You know, maybe it's this 90-minute drive. I don't know. You know, it just really depends. Again, it sort of goes back to that association piece where how is your child associating soccer with positivity and hard work, or with negativity and this sucks? And sorry to sound so stark, but it's true. And you want to find a trainer that's great. And if you can't find one, like I said before, if you got siblings, if you got yourself, maybe, like, there's some things my field player daughter does when I help her that I can't even remotely keep up with her, right? And so we've made it into something fun where I'm literally sitting and just using my hands and putting the ball where she wants it. And it's wonderful time together, and it's okay. So I would highly advise people that if your child's not enjoying their keeper training, to move on. And then in terms of mentorships, I see down there, that's a big one too. What I do, and again, not that it's right, but I saw Katie when she was younger, in her early teens, really respond well to training with older goalkeepers. And there's something about older goalkeepers taking younger ones under their wing inside of the sessions that is really beautiful. The younger ones will naturally look up to the older ones. They'll want to try to be as good as them. Those mentorships inside a training session can be gorgeous to watch and to witness. I do that now. Sometimes I have, 14 keepers at once, and the age range is pretty big. And we make sure that the older ones who live, like, say, they're playing college and they're back, they might strike an age appropriate ball to a 12-year-old, and that's fine. But those mentorships inside of there are invaluable, because those older keepers have been through it already and are still going through it. And they may have a piece of advice to a younger player that will mean more coming from them than it would from any coach or parent that would say so. So I think mentorships are huge. And again, they're not always just readily available, depending on where you live. But if you find someone that your young person sparks to, do it. And even as parents, sometimes we find mentorships in other parents who've been further down the line or been through this journey already before. I know I did, and it was very helpful. And because we learned a lot with Katie's journey on the way through, and it was not always easy. And then in terms of, I think we covered it all pretty much there. Yeah, the car ride home, just try to keep it positive, even if it was a crappy loss. And maybe the coach said something that was not received very well by your child. Hear it out. I would also say a little thing, it's not on here. Try to follow most clubs and coaches have a cooling off period, either 24 or 48 hours. Try to adhere to that. That's not only to protect the coach from maybe saying something to you after the heat of the moment of a game. I found with parents, it also protects us as parents from saying something that we would regret. Give yourself time to cool off, think about it logically, rationally, and move forward from there. If you still feel that you're motivated to strike up a conversation with a coach 48 hours later, you'll be in a better headspace to do so.
Yeah, I absolutely love that piece of advice. We've first, Stephen, thank you. I want to give some of the parents, if I could, the opportunity to ask questions. I'm going to go back to that slide. It was in the wrong chronological order. But before we do, parents, coaches, goalkeepers, do you have any questions that you would like to ask Coach Steve? Okay. I'll give you one final chance after we talk about Katie's save. Coach Steve?
I will. Can I jump on one thing? It's a question that I think some people might be asking, but they're not, and that's okay. It just came up the other day. How to deal with a coach who's quote unquote being a jerk with your kid, right? Being overly critical. It's very challenging to not take that personally for the young person. And again, this might work for you and it might not. I don't think it's a personal attack per se. I think coaches give their criticism based on what they think the game demands of the player. Some of them do it incredibly well, and some of them do it incredibly inartfully and rude and obnoxious. And oftentimes you hear coaches say, players need to be comfortable with getting uncomfortable. That's how improvement's going to come. I would challenge coaches to be comfortable with getting uncomfortable as well and finding better ways to express what they think their player needs to work on or how a moment could have been rectified in the game. And I would encourage players to try to very much not take it personally. It's literally coach A, B, C, and D. They're all giving you advice or criticism based on what they see you needing to play the game at a higher level. And I generally have really sweet relationships with the kids I work with. And I say, I do it too. I think that the game at the higher level demands that you should be able to use both feet equally. And so that's why we're going to work on your non-dominant foot even more, just as an example. Because I know that's part of it with goalkeeper life on the way through. There's some tough moments for kids with their coaches. And that's my advice on that. And if it keeps going, then go to your club director and say, look, there's some things happening here with the communication, the style of communication that's really troubling for my kid. And then the other thing for players I would advise is when you say my coach has taken my confidence, I would ask you to ask yourself, did your coach take it or did you allow it to be given? I think that we can only allow our confidence to be given away. I don't think anybody can take it from us. I could be doing a training session or Erik could be doing one and some other trainer could walk up to Erik or me and go, dude, you're terrible. Erik's not going to go, oh my God, he's shattered my confidence. I'm not. I'm going to keep my confidence and maybe learn from whatever that criticism is, but I'm never going to allow it to be given away. Okay. That's all. I wanted to make sure we got that in.
And sometimes you gotta look at the source too, right?
Sorry, Erik, I was going to ask Steve a question.
Laura, go right ahead.
Sorry about that. Steve, what's your biggest piece of advice? You went through it with Katie. How do you keep these goalkeepers' mind space right through all these, like the college recruiting season and all the ups and downs that come with it? How do you keep their spirits high?
That's a great question. It's a great question. So again, I don't know if, you know, my advice is going to make sense or not. Okay. But it's how I did it with Katie. It's how we did it with Sienna, our younger, who's going to go play at UCLA this winter. I'm sitting in a park right now where there's a lot of recreational and AYSO teams that play. And across the nation, at any age group, you have approximately, if you throw it all together, 6,000 to 8,000 teams, as far as I understand it. You have a child who's getting recruited by a university at any level, they're in the top 1% of many, many players across the United States. And not that my daughters nor your daughter aren't grateful for the journey of it, but it's something that I feel should be underlined. And I did it with both of our girls. I tried to enjoy it and not stress about it. Why would we want to stress about something that's so wonderful, such a beautiful potential opportunity happening? And just enjoy the ride, because there's so many kids out there that would want to trade places with them in a heartbeat if they could, that want to play college soccer, that unfortunately, for whatever reasons they may be, will not do so. And just enjoy it. It's going to turn out how whatever school they end up at is going to be hopefully a good fit. And even then, if it's not, they'll put in a season. If it's a disaster, they're homesick, they don't have any kind of relationship with their coaches. In this day and age, they can put in the transfer portal and move right on down the line. But I would advise just enjoy it all. Why not? Why not? There's so many young people that would dream of being recruited, of getting one phone call, one email, one text from a college coach that never will. So just love it all. Enjoy every second. Enjoy every second of watching your kids play. I loved watching my daughter Katie play. I love watching Sienna play. I would give anything to be able to watch Katie play again. And so when I say enjoy every second, I mean it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thank you, thank you. Questions?
I have a question, Erik.
Rita, go
Can you
right
hear
ahead.
me?
Thank you.
Um,
We can hear you fine. Yes.
and when it's the opposite, Steve, you know, you do everything, you do the goalkeeper training private, your kid is involved into it, and then comes the politics of the club, and then he's going to the second place just for the politics instead of the first goalkeeper, and the coach only takes one keeper at a time. What do you do to not, like, as a parent, to cope with your kid and help them to not feel that they are not that good, and keep fighting and keep involved into it and keeping giving the best of their actions in each training and everything?
I'm sorry, I kind of struggled to hear the question in there. The signal wasn't super strong. I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, like there's a coach who's putting your player on the second team. Is that right?
No, my son, okay, he used to be the first goalkeeper of the CNL team last season.
Okay.
And then they did tryouts in May. And then because of the politics, not because of his skills and everything, he became the training player in the team and not the first keeper. And how you still keeping doing, like, showing them that I know frustrations happen, everything on our lives is how life it is for everybody. But for a 12-year, 13 years old kid to what I'm doing wrong. If I'm training 5 times a week, if I'm doing outside off the field stuff, what is, and then they don't tell you what it is, and
Okay,
then they
that's
don't
it right there.
open.
That's the moment right there. At least for me, that's what I hear is then they don't tell you, right? So it sounds like I'm not there. I don't know. It sounds like somebody's not brave enough to tell your son the truth that they feel. And somebody needs to tell that to your son and to you, but especially to your son. So otherwise, your son's going to keep ruminating and wondering and wondering and wondering and wondering, in my opinion, anyway. And that's not ideal. It would be better to hear a hard truth from a coach than to just be left guessing, in my opinion. And if your son's not getting that hard truth, then I think it's okay for you to have a friendly conversation with that coach and ask for it so that you have an answer. Because then when your son has an answer, he can have an action, right? He can go back into that if then situation. Okay, if that coach thinks, excuse me, this, then I'm going to do that to prove him wrong. I think you're missing some information that you need to get.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, Steve, if that's okay, and Erik.
Sure, of course.
So our son, it was the starting goalie. He is the starting goalie on his club team. They've created a regional team that he was invited to be a part of. And so he's been training with the new, more competitive team, which has been really great, but picked him up from practice today. And he's the second goalie on the new team. And he's already defeated, thinking, I don't think I belong on this team. I shouldn't be in the team picture. I didn't get rostered this weekend. Granted, he's only 11, but what advice would you give us as the parents? And I tried to tell him, like, you were picked on to be on this team for a reason, because your coach knows that you're good and believes in you. And if nothing else, this is better training. But to go from a starting goalie to a backup on a new team, what advice would you have?
That's a tricky question. It may just not be his time yet. If the coach put him on the team, they put him on for a reason. And maybe he doesn't know what that reason is just yet. And he should have faith in himself that he's going to find out what it is and keep training. Now, if he's miserable after a little while, then that's something to take a look at. And maybe, he goes back to where he was or some version of that. But if he feels, the coach feels that there's potential there for him to make an impact on that team, it just might take a while. And that's okay. That can be the journey sometimes, where it's a grind for a long time until the flower finally blooms. It can take a long time. That'd be my advice. Just try to keep it all positive, understand it, hear it out, offer that, it just may not be your time yet. You're here for a reason. You keep training, you're developing, and you're going to shine at some point. We don't know when that is, but it's coming. Always try to stay positive with it. Unless the resistance is so strong after a while from your own child saying, I don't want to do this anymore, then that's a whole different thing. But for now, it sounds like a lot of change has just happened, and that can be tough. And even for any of us, right? So, that's my advice. I don't know if it's very good or not, but that's what I think you should try.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because he still loved it, and he wants to go back and wants to keep working hard. It's just to go from starter to backup is an adjustment, right?
Absolutely. And it happens to all of them at some point. You can have an amazing club player, a guy who's a superstar, and he goes off to college and he can't get on the field the first year because there's just too many good players. They have to ask themselves the same question: is it just not my time yet? Do I want to keep grinding, or do I want to transfer out and go somewhere else? It's an athletic. As an athlete, regardless of the sport, so many athletes go through that exact moment that he's going through now. And so I would advise, do what you want, of course, just to keep it super positive and an eye on the horizon.
Thank you.
Nice.
Of course.
Time for one more question, if anyone would like. Okay. Well, Coach Steve, thank you for everything. I appreciate your candid honesty with everything that you talk about. And for me, I learned a ton tonight. I always do. I always do. So thank you for your time tonight. Could you please, if you could, talk about Katie's save, if you don't mind?
I don't mind at all. And thank you again for having me. And I learned a lot as well. And I'm always learning all the time. I think we all are, or at least try to be. Katie's Save is a foundation that my wife and I started in honor of our daughter, Katie, who was as we've established, a soccer player at Stanford. But she was more than that. She was an RA. She was awaiting acceptance to law school there. She was a gifted communicator. She had started a podcast series with a subsidiary of Facebook. She was going to do a TED Talk. She was a international relations major. And the reason I'm saying all this isn't to put her on a pedestal necessarily, but for us to understand that tragedy can strike with anybody. And Katie got involved in a disciplinary process up there. Katie was a fiercely loyal teammate. I think probably everybody on this call has counseled their children to have their families back, to have their teams back. It's part of our society. It's part of our culture, certainly as athletes. And she had a teammate who was, since this is being recorded, I will say allegedly sexually assaulted by a football player. And nothing much happened with that player. And Katie encountered him a couple days later and apparently spilled coffee on him. And she got embroiled in a disciplinary process up there. And we didn't know about it. This is the crux of all of it. When your kids go off to college, because of the HIPAA and FERPA laws, you may not be informed of things that are happening in their life. You may pay their tuition, their car insurance, etc. But unless they tell you, you may not know their grades or anything like that that's going on. And Katie had about a 3.5-month period of this investigation that she didn't hear from the office. And she told her teammates, a couple of them, that she thought it was over with. After all, nothing happened with the football player, so maybe they dropped it with her. And then on the night of her passing, she received a single-spaced 5-page document, a charge letter filled with legalese that not only threatened to withhold her diploma, but actually removal from the university just 3 months shy of graduation. And she took her life and suffered what experts call an acute stress reaction. And that is when an otherwise flourishing person has something just go sideways in their life out of the blue. And we know this can happen as a society because if you were to spend a night in jail, you get checked to make sure you have nothing on you that you can harm yourself or others with. And we miss her terribly every single day. And Katie's Save basically has become a foundation where Gina and I are pursuing a law here in California to start, and it's made great progress over the last 1.5 years or so, where a student can have a designated advocate at any of our public universities, the UC, Berkeley, UCLA, all the Cal States, community colleges, so that they become involved in an administrative conflict, whether it's a disciplinary action like Katie was going through, or a Title IX process, academic probation, substance abuse. They choose a designated advocate on the outside of the university. So it could be their club soccer coach. It could be somebody like Erik. It could be a youth pastor, their pediatrician, a favorite high school teacher. It doesn't matter. As long as somebody knows that something's going on with this young person. Because you can have a university with all the mental health resources and academic resources you could dream of, but if you can't get that young person to the appropriate resource or the appropriate office, then I would respectfully ask, what good are all of those resources? And so we are close here in California. The bill 1575 is moving along. It will, if it passes, it will be known as Katie Meyer's Law. It's made it through an assembly vote, multiple committees. And this is not our world. We're getting an education, my wife and I, but it's an education we're happy to take on. And soon it will be voted on by our assembly. And then our Senate and the Assembly at the same time, because they have to vote on the same bill, and it's evolved a little bit. And then it may find its way to our governor's desk by mid to late September. And we're also working on it nationally. We've had some meetings with senators in Washington, D.C. about a month ago, a couple of representatives on the Congress side. And if we find our way through here in California, then there's that if then again, we will probably pursue it nationally. We have an evolving world where these young people, they put their heart and soul into everything they're doing. They have social media, which people my age didn't have. Everything seems to be heightened for them. And we just need some evolving policies to make sure they're being taken care of at the university level. We've heard far too many stories, my wife and I, in the last 2.5 years about good students around the nation not having due process. And this is like a whole new thing. We didn't understand this. We didn't know. And I think a lot of us don't know. You know, on the outside, you could have a guy my age who's got 4 decades of really hurting people, and he goes and does it again. And it could be even caught on camera. He's going to have the presumption of innocence and an attorney, whether he can afford it or not. We have good kids getting in situations on our universities, and even falsely accused ones, kids falsely accused of cheating. They're presumed guilty, and they don't get any representation. And that we can't have that anymore. And so all we're trying to do is just provide a little front end safety net for our young people, and very unoppressive to them. They get the power, they get to choose. They don't have to do it, but if they want to, they can choose somebody they trust just to have their back in these moments when things can get pretty serious on these campuses. And we feel that we need to do this. We have to do this. This cannot visit another young person, their family, campus community like that ever again. It cannot go that way. And we feel that if Katie could see what we're doing, she would be happy about it. Because there's days we want to just lay and cry, and that's it. But and that'd be okay too, by the way. But we feel if she could see us, that would break her heart. And so we're going to keep plowing on and get this done if possible. And there's been so much support from around the nation. We're so grateful for that. And without that support, I don't know how if we could have made it this far. So I want to thank everybody for everything that they've done. And if you're on this call and you are on Instagram, I hate asking this, but it actually helps the cause we're trying to achieve. Follow us on Instagram, visit the website if you get a few minutes, and on we go.
Steve, thank you for that overview. Thank you. And for anyone on the call that would like to get involved or learn more, please visit the website, katiesave.org. Awesome.
Thank you. You guys are great.
Yes.
Hope everybody has a beautiful season.
Hey, Erik.
Yeah.
Love it all.
Erik, can we say hi?
Oops.
It's Jim.
Sorry, 1 second. Jim, go right ahead, sir.
Oh, did Steve take off?
No, I'm here.
I knew your daughter.
You did.
Well, seeing that I've known Paul Ratcliffe for 25 years. I met him when he's at UCLA. Melissa, the assistant coaches are like one of them, Melissa, got hired a week before Katie passed away.
Okay. Yes.
And so I know a lot of the staff because Erik knows me. I scout for the MLS, and so I go to a ton of games and stuff. So if I've known stuff. But if I can help you, let me know.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I have a ton of lawyers. One of my Erik, am I talking to him? Message telling me to shut up. Yeah. One of my my
I'm just gonna stop the recording.
Please do.